Okay, guys, so today is going to go pretty similarly to what we did last week. So you have a packet in front of you, and you are going to be filling in blanks as we go. So you are going to, kind of like last time, want to follow along word for word because it's going to be fairly similar. I might elaborate a little bit here and there, but in the end, I'm always going to go back to what your packet says. So if you're following along word for word, you're going to be able to fill in these blanks. All right, so let's go ahead and start. Our learning target for today is I can identify the author's purpose when I read a text. So the author's purpose is the reason why an author writes a story or article. An author may write to entertain you or convince you of something. The author may also write to inform or to give facts and details about a topic. To determine an author's purpose, find out what the passage is mostly about. Ask yourself, is the passage written in a funny or entertaining way? Does it include opinion words or convincing ideas? Think about whether the author gives lots of facts about a topic. Decide whether the author's purpose is to entertain, persuade, or inform. So we're going to go ahead and practice with that. Okay? So we're going to read these sentences, and I want you to think about what is the author's purpose for this paragraph. It had been a long week. Between studying for 3 tests and going to basketball tryouts at night, I was going nonstop. Then I had to babysit Thursday night. By Friday, I could barely keep my eyes open. So let's think about it. This passage is mostly about a character who is exhausted. The phrase, I could barely keep my eyes open, is written in a funny way. 3, the paragraph does not give lots of facts about a topic. And 4, when we really think about it, the author's purpose is to entertain. So when we're reading, we should try this strategy. Predict. When you predict, you try to think of what a passage will be about or what will happen next. Okay? So read the title and look at any illustrations to get an idea of the topic. As you read, pause after each paragraph and predict what will happen next. Then, check your predictions at the end to see if you were correct. So now we're going to go ahead and practice with this. So I want you to listen to this passage and try to keep those ideas in mind as we go. So this is titled 3-Pointer. It had been a long week. Between studying for 3 tests and going to basketball tryouts at night, I was going non-stop. Then I had to babysit Thursday night. By Friday, I could barely keep my eyes open. So the title sounds like the story is going to be about basketball, but the first paragraph is about being overtired. So this makes me start to wonder why the author chose these specific words. Okay, so now I'm really going to be thinking about that while we continue reading. At lunch, I was the last one at the table. All the chairs were already filled. Pull up a seat, said Lucille. I grabbed a chair from another table and squeezed my tray in with all the others. There wasn't much room, so my tray hung off the end of the table. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and make another thought here. The author seems like he or she is setting up a situation that looks bad for the narrator. So I want you to make a prediction about what will happen next. So let's keep reading. I'm not sure how I fell asleep with all that noise in the lunchroom. As I nodded off, my hand slammed the edge of my tray. The tray flipped over, sending spaghetti all over me. I reached out to save my dinner roll. Instead of catching the roll, I slapped it. It flew toward the floor, hitting my fork along the way at just the right angle. The fork flew upwards, sailed over everyone's head, and swished into the garbage can. This sudden, messy action might remind you of a funny movie. So this tells me the author is telling a funny story. 3 points, shouted Lucille, and the whole room suddenly cheered. All right, so let's look at an example of how we might dissect a question. So let's look at this question. The main event in this story is A, funny, B, sad, C, informative, or D, convincing. So we're going to work with some of these strategies. First, we need to think about what is this passage about, okay? Well, the passage is about a girl who falls asleep and makes a mess in the cafeteria. So next, we should look for words and ideas that would entertain, persuade, or convince, or give facts about a topic. Well, the main event in the story is funny and entertaining. So next, we need to decide the author's purpose. The author's purpose is to entertain because the main event in the story is funny. So the answer is A. Now, on your paper, you are going to go ahead and answer these questions. We'll read them together, and I want you to make sure you're circling the answers in your packet. 1. This passage would best be described as A, a description of cafeterias, B, an informative article about student life, C, a fun story, or D, an argument. Number 2. What words best describe the passage? A, serious and formal, B, casual and lighthearted, C, worried and concerned, or D, angry and aggressive. Number 3. Why does the author describe what happens to the fork? A, to inform the reader about silverware, B, to explain what can happen to a fork when it is hit with a roll, C, to persuade the reader never to try this stunt, or D, to make the reader laugh. Number 4. What is the author's purpose in writing this passage? A, to explain something, B, to tell an entertaining story, C, to convince the reader of something, or D, to inform the reader of an issue. So go ahead and make sure you've answered all of those questions before we move on. So now we're going to read another article. And this one's actually from a newspaper. So this is titled, Woman Sets Sailing Record. England. British sailor Ellen MacArthur has set a world record after sailing around the world in just 71 days. She is the fastest person to complete the trip by herself. Sailing around the world with no one else aboard was not an easy task for the 28-year-old. MacArthur had to live on freeze-dried meals. She could sleep for only 15 to 30 minutes at a time. She also had to deal with harsh winds, icebergs, and technical problems with the boat. At one point during the difficult trip, MacArthur's 75-foot boat nearly collided with a whale. MacArthur was greeted by 8,000 screaming fans as she sailed across the finish line in the harbor of her homeland, England. "It has been an unbelievable journey," she said afterward. "When I crossed the line, I felt like collapsing on the floor and just falling asleep. I was absolutely over the moon." From the sounds of it, MacArthur still has plenty of sailing left to do. "There are lots of records out there," she said. "I do not want to stop sailing this boat." So let's go ahead and try to figure out what the author's purpose would be by looking at some clues from the passage. So just like we did before, we are going to want to pay attention to what the passage is about. If it has any words or phrases that seem like they are put in there to entertain us, or to convince us or something. And we're also going to look for facts about a topic. So the main topic of this passage is that the article is about a woman who set sailing records. Next, we see that there are lots of facts about Ellen MacArthur, her boat, and her journey. However, we do not see words or phrases that are entertaining or that are trying to convince the reader of something. So with all of that, we can decide that the author's purpose with this article is to inform the reader. So let's review. You are learning how to determine the author's purpose. The author's purpose is the reason the author wrote a passage. The purpose could be to inform, to persuade, which means to convince, or to entertain. Review the steps you can use to determine the author's purpose. First, think about what the passage is mainly about. Then look for words and phrases that are entertaining or persuasive. Look for facts and details that inform or describe. Then decide if the author has written to entertain you, to persuade you, or to give information about a topic. So now let's practice some more. We're going to read the following passage, and as I read and you follow along, I want you to think about the author's purpose. Decide what message the author is trying to send. Is the author's purpose to inform, persuade, which means convince, or to entertain? People who are glass blowers have quite a talent. Glass blowing is the art of shaping glass. A glass blower begins by heating a lump of glass until it becomes flexible. When glass is heated, it turns soft and stretchy like taffy. The glass blower then places a gob of hot glass at the end of a long, hollow metal tube. When the glass blower blows into the tube, a bubble forms in the gob of glass. Then the metal tube is turned and the glass twirls into new shapes. Different tools are used to yank and stretch the glass. An assortment of colors can also be drizzled onto the creation to make a truly unique design. So now we're going to fill in some boxes. And first we're going to write the topic of the passage, then write words and phrases that give clues about the author's purpose, and in the last box, we're going to describe the author's purpose. So when we look at this, we notice that the topic is glass blowing. That's what the whole little passage is about. Now, some of the clues we see are that there are no phrases that are entertaining or funny. There are no words or phrases that are persuading the reader. They're not trying to convince us of anything. And we also see lots of facts and details about the process of glass blowing. So when we put all of that together, we see that the author's purpose is to inform. The author is trying to teach us about glass blowing. Now let's practice with another passage. So I'm going to read the passage, and I want you to think about what is the author's purpose. My aunt and I sure do make great travel companions. Touring Italy together last spring was so much fun. We spent an entire week together, and we laughed the whole time. When we first arrived in Rome, the capital of Italy, we were both exhausted because of the time change. We checked into our hotel and took a brief nap. Then we felt refreshed enough to explore the beautiful city. Rome has so much history. We saw ancient statues that have been around since 100 AD and earlier. The Colosseum is one of the most famous landmarks in Rome. It was an amphitheater many years ago. Bullfights and other types of battles took place there. Today, it is half fallen down and is there only for visitors to admire. Another place we visited was the Spanish Steps. The steps are a place for people to relax and linger during the midday. Italians like to take a long lunch, The Spanish Steps is where they meet with friends to eat and chill out. My favorite stop was the local market. In this area of Rome, local merchants lined the streets. They sold fresh tomatoes, cucumbers, pizza, cheeses, and all sorts of fruits. Everything was delicious to eat, especially the gelato, which is Italian ice cream. Italy certainly has a special beauty to it. I could spend a month there. So now we're going to use a graphic organizer to determine the author's purpose. So the first clue we notice is that the passage is about a person's trip to Italy. The next thing we see is that there are lots of facts about different places in Italy. And the final clue we notice is that there's information about the travelers laughing and things they enjoyed, such as gelato. There are phrases like chill out, which makes it feel relaxed and fun. Now, when we put this all together, we notice that the author's purpose is both to entertain and to inform. So this is something you'll notice occasionally. Sometimes the author is going to have multiple purposes. They may be trying to inform you about something in order to persuade you, or they might be trying to teach you about something, but do so in a way that is fun and entertaining. So sometimes the author might have multiple purposes, so keep an eye out for that. And we're going to practice with one more article. We're going to read this passage and then answer the questions to determine the author's purpose. You can make a graphic organizer on a separate sheet of paper to organize your thoughts if you need to. Dear editor, now that I'm in 5th grade, I've decided that English is a crazy language. Some words just don't make sense at all. I mean, how can a slim chance and a fat chance mean the same thing? However, a wise man and a wise guy are opposites. If vegetarians eat vegetables, what do humanitarians eat? I think we should try to change a few of these wacky words. The word building, for example, should have a new name. Why is it called a building if it has already been built? People should call it a built from now on. Apartment is an unusual word too. An apartment is joined, not apart. It's also a type of complex. So I've created the word joinplex, which I believe is much more fitting. I hope you agree with my suggestions. Once everyone knows about these new words, people will have an easier time learning the English language. Yours truly, Peter Crowley. So now let's look at these questions. Number 1, what is the main idea or event of the passage? Number 2, what words give clues about the purpose of the passage? And number 3, what is the author's purpose? Okay, so I want you to create a graphic organizer similar to the other ones we've done, so that we gave you a couple different ones. You can pick which one you like the best. And then I want you to use that information to answer these 3 questions. Okay? So keep in mind all the things we've gone over, look over your guided notes to help you out, and get these answered. When you finish that, I want you to go to Coach Digital, and you are going to complete the practice lesson that is posted there. Afterwards, you're going to go to iExcel, and you are going to work on skills that are posted on the board. Once you get all of that completed, you will need to read silently for 10 minutes, and then you can have free time. All right, guys, get to work. You've done a great job, and you are going to do great. All right.